Thanks for joining me today, Tamsin.
Thanks for having me, Louise. It's
And
very good to see you in the new year.
if you'd like to introduce yourself
Yes.
and who you work for and what you do, it'd be great.
Well, if you don't know me already, Louise, then I'm Tamsin Smith, the global head of Future Product Concept, which is a very long title, working for Triumph. So day to day means basically I'm a designer working on global product, global meaning for all of Europe, as well as the Nordics, the UK, because they're not in the EU anymore, Asia, so all the APAC countries, and Japan. So I create global product which is sold in all those countries.
Yeah.
Usually once or twice a year. And they're usually long-running products as well that bring a high revenue and marketing into Triumph to rejuvenate the brand as well as increase profit growth. And that's my day-to-day.
Yeah.
And the product can be either seasonal look and feel, or they can be innovative product, but they're also always consumer-led and consumer-focused with in very deep collaboration with the consumer insights teams, marketing and brand as well.
It encompasses a lot.
Yes. And they're usually based over a 2-3 year product strategy. And they're usually developed on a separate timeline, so in a pipeline development.
Yeah.
And alongside that, then I also do the creative trends and direction with color for all the teams, so for all of Europe, Asia, and Japan, and then that's synthesized down to their regions. Also work on strategy, and then as my part-time job on top is 3D. This implementation of 3D to reduce samples and to drive marketing and consumer engagement through 3D. It's a lot, but I didn't have that much when I started the 3D journey.
Yeah.
When I started the 3D journey with in-house design, I was the head of Europe creative design.
Right.
So I was really just focusing on Europe, with Germany being the main focus.
Yeah.
So my 3D efforts or role still focuses on Europe only.
Right.
For the Triumph brand, but slowly, we will integrate 3D into Asia and Japan.
Yeah.
But due to business cases and needs and budgets, it's a really long-term goal for them.
Yeah.
So I'll just quickly summarize for Asia and Japan. The only thing we've done in Asia so far is we've trained up the designers. They have all the equipment, they have the Visu scanner, but they're using it at their own pace and for their own need. So they're designing with 3D, whereas Triumph Europe, we're not really designing with 3D. We're replacing physical with digital samples.
Interesting that you don't have an aligned strategy for both regions, but I think
it's different business cases. So in Europe, we're a retail and wholesale-led business.
Right.
In Asia, it's our own retail, and we do then have distance retail distribution for like Tmall. So we don't really need samples there, for instance. And then Japan again is a different type of business case. So there's no immediate requirement for 3D because Asia and Japan have very little salesman samples sampling, for instance, whereas Europe, we're still sending us, before we started this journey with you, was still sending a sample to every sales office and salesman and woman across Europe.
So, okay, so just like going back to that and going back to your initial need for 3D, do you want to take us through like what your past state was, what was going on in Triumph to even motivate you to look at 3D?
Yeah, so that was, I think that was it 3.5 years ago now?
Yeah, it was a while ago now.
It doesn't seem so long ago because it's just changing all the time, but 3.5 years ago, the business had one of their yearly midterm plan strategies of how to increase profit and growth for the next few years. And I was given the task of 3D sampling to basically, the project team was to reduce cost and to reduce timelines. So we want to get closer to market.
Yeah.
And one of those work streams was to reduce the amount of samples that we produce would ultimately reduce lead times. So that was the goal there. So when we said to reduce sampling, it wasn't design development sampling, it was salesman samples. Because the Triumph company, we already in Europe had a very streamlined set of samples. One development sample would go around everybody, the different cross functions from design development to merchandise, finally to marketing to e-com. And it was one precious sample that would go around the Europe. And then the salespeople, the sales teams across Europe would have their own full set of the range in terms of novelty collection and new color editions of the running collections as well.
Wow.
So the running collections, everybody got a sample of a bra that we've been seeing for the last 20 years in a new color twice a year, every season, or 5 colors, whatever it needed to be.
Yeah.
So why do we need a sample for that? So this is when they said, let's do digital of this.
Yeah.
So that was the journey that's the journey that we went on, and a task that I was given with absolutely no further information.
Brilliant. But just in terms of like volume, what were you looking at in terms of like the volume of sampling you were doing for your salesman samples?
Yeah, it was about well, I can tell you it's about 200,000 samples a year.
Wow.
A year, so that's two seasons.
Yeah.
And that's novelties and run-ins.
Wow.
And that would be a full set of collection. And that was at the beginning. We've not only just reduced physical samples, but reduced the amount of collection over the last few years as well.
Okay.
So really, there were other work streams to streamline that, to make the best out of the product that we have and go deeper, etc. And but so it's quite a lot.
Wow, it's a lot. So you're looking at color runs, all of that going
One
on.
bra, one brief for each set, so each collection, yeah.
Jesus, that is a lot of
And
work.
we were making those samples physically ourselves. So we were producing those samples in our German office. So as well as the plan to go digital, the other side was that for the samples that you do actually need, let's make them out of our own Moroccan factory, for instance. So that only novelties, brand new product would be made in our German office. So we can concentrate on novelties and innovation, and the factory can concentrate on the run-ins, and then we should produce digital samples for 3D. What changed for us really is the Triumph Group's overheads of sampling costs.
Yeah.
It's allowed us a little bit more time here and there for taking a bit longer over a color decision, because we didn't need to action the color now to order sampling. But it hasn't really changed much for us on a day-to-day. Maybe there's a question later, but it would have been nice if it had made more of an impact to us on a day-to-day, but it's more impacted us on a professional and personal level, that we learned new skills and we're learning new programs, because design was quite stagnant for the last 20 years. Nothing changed for us. So this was what we gained, but I'm still in the journey. It's only been 3 years, but I'm still trying to find out what works for us on a day-to-day in 3D as a design team.
It's a long-term journey, it's a long-term commitment, and I guess the most pressing need at that time was to reduce your sampling. I mean,
yes,
that was creating the biggest bottleneck, and in terms of cost as well. So
and sustainability. Imagine how much fabric we were buying and dyeing, and that product still had a risk of not being bought at the end of the day.
Wow.
So you might, people say, I want 5 colors, and then the volumes are so low on one color, for instance, that we just drop it, but we've ordered all those sampling materials. So then we've got the dead stock just sat there. So it helps a lot with that as well.
That's major. What do you think the biggest impact was in working with us and going through that journey of your beginnings of 3D? Because when we started working together, it really was at that first stage of you learning about 3D.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. On a personal level, for me, I learned so much from you and from some of your team as well, to be able to navigate their senior leadership teams with their requests. So they set the work stream without any guidance or of telling me how to do it. So I really had to go out and find everything for myself, because there wasn't one person in the business that knew about it.
Yeah.
So along with yourself and then someone from IT, we were able to, INHOUSE really educated me on the 3D process. So I think you really gave me the foundation of the theory.
Yeah.
So that I was be able to converse with the software suppliers,
Yeah.
the internal teams of what I needed from the pattern teams, for instance, in terms of files. We both went through the complexities of lingerie again, because whereas I was just almost a robot of lingerie, I really had to deep dive into it again and see the complexities. And I think the biggest thing that I understood at the beginning, that exactly what we do in the physical world, we do in a digital world.
Yeah.
I mean, we still don't have to have 30 components in a digital asset.
Yeah.
But we started with probably a lot more than we actually needed.
Yeah.
It was some big learning curves and a big impact for me in terms of my personal development and career as well, I think.
Yeah.
So it gave me, INHOUSE gave me the confidence to go into those bigger meetings and ask for the investment money, which was a lot of money, I thought, but they actually didn't think it was a lot of money. But I thought I was asking for a lot of money. But I did feel empowered to know,
Yeah.
to go in there, empowered by you and your team,
Yeah.
that I wasn't just talking bullshit. Well, I hope it wasn't, but I got through it anyway. So you really helped me bullshit my way through.
Brilliant. Glad to be of service.
You're welcome.
But it is that initial knowledge. It's such a big gap between where we were before and then where you want to be going forward.
Yeah.
So it is, I mean, the fact that we've empowered you, we've given you that kind of language and the terminology and the education to feel confident enough to go and ask for that investment and kind of get that buy-in. That's what we want, because at the end of the day, we want 3D to be long term. It's not just for now, let's create some assets and let's see what happens. It's a kind of long term and big, that when you need that bigger buy-in in order to get that long term investment.
Yeah, I think I think the INHOUSE team's also able to give me a bigger picture of the business needs. So not to think just about what we needed today. It was more about, you were really focused on what I needed at the end.
Yeah.
So rather than trying to sell me additional things or additional services, we had one goal, and that was to recreate digital samples and to do a trial to see if this was going to work.
Yeah.
And that's what we achieved together. And we didn't have any, if we had concerns, we were able to talk about them at any time. If we were coming up with issues on both sides or problems, we were able to work through them. And then every problem that you had, you shared it with me, so it educated me. And then also, if we had any, I learned a lot from your business model, and then how I could ask for the certain things in the contract for payments and things for on the business side, which was quite new for me as well. So it was completely different to what I normally do. I did learn a lot from you guys on that side.
So, but what made you pull the trigger on working with us in the first place? Like what was that motivation?
I think it was your enthusiasm, your confidence in the business, and also you also had how do I say it? You also wanted to learn as well. So I think we were just we knew we were going to learn together because you'd not done the lingerie side of things. And I thought that for me, that was, if you're going to learn, then I'm going to learn.
Yeah.
And if you knew exactly what you were doing 100%, then maybe I wouldn't learn enough from you.
Yeah.
So I had two vendors. That was you and another 3D company that was more specialized in lingerie. But I really wanted to test out. It was a trial run that we did, a big trial run.
Yeah.
And if it worked with you, who's a novice to lingerie,
Yeah.
the years of, I know you touched on it once upon a time, but to the
Yeah.
real like lingerie bras and intricate laces and embroidery, I thought I could learn a lot from you and we could learn it together. So I thought our personalities match, but also just this, we could learn much more together on a journey and figure it out rather than you just handing me a package. Because
Yeah.
then I would have been left on my own.
Exactly. Exactly.
And if I'd have gone for the lingerie specialist, they'd have just presumed I knew everything because it was lingerie.
Yeah.
And so this is why we preferred to go with you in the end. But it wasn't just my final decision. So what I had to do is take everything that you were offering, not just on a budget level, but on a service level, the time frames, the education, the quality, because we did a few little tests as well and workarounds, but your honesty, all this was taken into consideration when we go to the board.
Yeah.
It was generally supposed to have 3. So the third person that would have done it was like assist.
Okay. Yeah.
But we didn't want to use their software either, or it would have been Chloe or someone, but they wanted to do the library, but they just wanted to do a library. They
Yeah.
weren't ready to educate. So we just had them on paper because you have to have three companies to do it.
Yeah.
So we took the 3 companies, yourself and the other 2 companies, and then we make a collective decision with the sponsorship team who's going to give us the money. And they made the final decision based on my recommendation. So I wouldn't have been, it wasn't just me alone.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, that we kind of passed the vigorous of tests, with the whole kind of Triumph company. So
Yeah, I mean, it's intense to get a Triumph contract is super intense. It can take months.
yeah, I remember it was months.
That was a short time. Yeah.
I remember from there were so many conversations beforehand, and then in the big presentation with like 80 people on Zoom asking questions about 3D.
Yeah, it seems, but that's the most impact it had on me, and the most this is why I'm saying it was the most important thing that INHOUSE gave me was the confidence. Because imagine how many conversations I had to have
Of course, of
to
course.
convince them of something that they asked me to do. So,
which is really funny because they gave you the task to do it.
I know.
And then you had to convince them that they should then do it.
And the funny thing is, we've been going 3 years, but still not everybody knows that we're doing it. And so I'm constantly re-educating, saying, but we do 3D. You pay for it.
We're actually doing it. We've done
You
it.
know that what's on e-com now is 3D, and you're like, really? Yeah.
That is so funny. There are actually,
I remember you saying though at the beginning, it's about constant education, constant learning. you can't just implement it and forget about it. But and that stuck with me because I know even from our early days of Photoshop, if you don't use it, you lose it, and if you don't keep upgrading your computer, it breaks down. And that's the
Exactly.
biggest thing that Triumph has to understand, or companies have to understand.
Yeah.
Once you start, you can't stop.
Yeah.
And now the hardest thing I've got is still trying to remind people that, look, these computers are nearly 4 years old now. Or,
Yeah.
yes, we do 3D, or I told you this restriction in the beginning, or I told you
Yeah.
this, I told you that. And there's still always a surprise to some people about the limitations of 3D still, and because there's still a lot of limitations in lingerie. So
Yeah.
we see huge advancements in outerwear, especially with AI and with
Definitely.
avatars. But as soon as you take everyone's clothes off, it all goes to
Yeah.
pieces.
And that's the thing. I think that in lots of different ways, even with apparel, it's still very much evolving.
Mm,
Before, lingerie is very niche. So as you know, as well as things like knitwear, you know. So
yeah.
they're gonna things are gonna evolve in that area just a little bit slower. But I still think, I mean, I think that 3D is going to be a lifelong advocacy. You're going to keep on having to mention it within your business.
Yeah.
But also, I think that a lot of people respond a lot better to visuals. They want to see user cases. They want to see like how we're going to use it, and then you back it up with the education and what it's going to take to get there, rather
I mean,
than
that's what you guys did for us at the beginning, was these user case. I mean, we took our best-selling bras and briefs that were worth, that we could put real money behind, of how many samples we order that and how much it makes us every year, for instance, and doing a real great user case
yeah,
of if we just took two collections, Amaret Charm and Amaret 300, this is the return of investment we could get based on this. And
yeah,
that was the best test case that we could do. So I think if anyone was looking to do business with you, or in any type of 3D implementation, again, is to do a test case first and break
yeah,
it down into chunks, because it's really hard to get people to carry on investing after you've done the first
yeah.
big delivery of 3Ds.
With for the business, from a business perspective, you are saving money. So you've reached the, you know, you've hit the targets they've given you in terms of what your initial kind of goals were: saving money, reducing costs,
Yeah.
reducing time in terms of creating salesman samples. So everything else kind of is a bonus that
Yeah.
they're
And
gonna,
then what I do, because we talked about this long-term investment and training and things. So
yeah,
we've been a bit on hold in terms of budgets. We have trained up more designers and gone to advanced learning, etc. But what I make sure, which doesn't really cost us anything, is that if we have time every Friday, the 3D designers will do training for themselves. So they'll go online and they'll look at videos, they'll try out new softwares and play around with new things. And so they've got that creative time on a Friday to really
yeah,
innovate and learn.
yeah.
And for the last year that they've been concentrating on 3D, but this year the team came to me, okay, we want to look back at some real product. So they immersed themselves into digital, and some of them didn't come from garment design. So now they want to actually get onto some real garments to improve their 3D. So this now Fridays, they're going to come back and look, the digital team are going to come and look how we do the creative process from a design side. So where our ideas come from, because
Yeah,
I think they're getting a bit stagnant now, just sitting behind a computer and doing digital samples, because they're designers, they're creative. So
yeah,
they want to know where the other design teams' ideas come from. So this
yeah.
is what we're doing Fridays now, is we're going to get them with their hands dirty back into trend research, mood boards designing, pattern cutting,
Brilliant.
etc., and do the physical side of design. And then we'll
Yeah.
swap again in another 6 months.
That's good because it all informs your practice, your design practice. So they kind of need to get back into
Well, I think it'll help as well when we do start designing in 3D, then they'll have a real understanding of what the designer's thinking.
Yeah,
So if they understand where the design came from and how the pattern goes together from the inside out, then it will help them create the digital pattern. Because
yeah,
they came straight out of uni doing these 3D digital, and they haven't done lingerie design patterns. They're just learning it on the screen. So we think that'll be a really advantage. And they asked for it in their appraisals this year as well. So that was good.
that's so good. That's so good. And like I said, I think it needs to come hand in hand, both the traditional ways of working and and the more innovative ways of working. They need to kind of work alongside each other, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Because otherwise, I think everyone gets a bit bored.
Exactly. So just to kind of round up this whole, sorry, the sun has literally come and it's like beating down on my face right now.
Enjoy it before it goes grey again.
Like, would you recommend us in terms of us helping a company through their implementation journey? And then what would you say to a company who's, going to implement 3D, given the challenges that you've had, but also, the good and bad?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, of course, I'd recommend in-house and already have to a few people anyway. And I always, if someone said it, because everyone's on a new journey of 3D, and I told them the same thing as told you, that you were really good at holding hands and educating and giving that confidence again, because I would imagine that there's a lot of companies not going to come with a big team, big
Yeah,
cross-functional team to implement 3D.
yeah,
And where you come in with a knowledge of all the different functions that 3D can touch as well. And you've also got the empathy to look at what we needed in terms of advice when it was just me. So you knew that I needed to know about how we could use 3D here, what were the libraries that we could set up, how you were going to deliver me the files, all these types of things that I'd never knew I should ask for. So it it was really good. And you were also good at saying, look, if you don't have that person, I can find this person, or I haven't got something quite right at the moment for your company's needs, but I know where to look for one. So I knew that it was, even if you didn't have the solution today, you would come up with a solution. And also what we also looked together is when you came up with a problem, you quickly changed overnight how you could resolve it. So you might have had one team working for me, and then you realized that maybe that wasn't the greatest route, so you changed overnight to a different set of people. Same with softwares. You said, I'm going to try this and I'm going to try this. When I couldn't decide what software I wanted,
yeah.
you were also able to change your software to meet my needs.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know from other companies, but in lingerie, lace is one of the most difficult things to do, and you really
Oh,
had to take that challenge on. So you tried so many different ways to represent lace, and you're
yeah.
still one of the only companies that I've found still that's been as resourceful at finding ways to recreate lace for us. So you did it the hard way, you did it an easy way, and you found the best solution. And I haven't even seen lace companies do that much yet in 3D.
Oh,
So yeah, I mean, there's lots of little things, but it's also quite lingerie specific. But I think if when you summarize it, you found a way for us, and you could change instantly. I don't know if that's a good thing for you, but it really helped for me anyway.
yeah.
You worked day and night to deliver on time.
I think it's about adaptability and agility. I think in this game, nothing's ever linear, nothing ever is static. So
Yeah.
you have to
Yeah,
be
and you
able.
worked on this, you worked with me on it day to day, so we didn't have a clear view at the to start with. We built it together. So you suggested a timeline, I filled it in, you came back, we worked on it together, and I think that's a real advantage to going with in-house.
Oh, that's great, Tamsin. Thank you very much. And thank
You're
you
welcome.
for, doing this case study with me. It's been really invaluable.